Republicans last night succeeded in blocking the funding bill needed to keep the government running past midnight tonight. Our fourth story this evening, the motive for this high-stakes opposition, principle, of course, purely principle, about which more in a moment. Republicans outraged by the $410 billion omnibus spending bill, which will keep government operations on track through September because it contains almost 9,000 earmarks totaling $7.7 billion. On Wednesday night, Missouri Democrat Claire McCaskill laid out the howling, hilarious hypocrisy involved in Republicans who fought mythical earmarks in the president's stimulus bill, promptly loading more than their share of earmarks into this real spending bill.
I listened while podiums were pounded about wasteful spending during the debate on the stimulus bill, during the debate on the economic recovery bill. I watched as my friends across the aisle took to the airwaves and gave many different speeches about wasteful spending in the stimulus bill. Let me quote some of the things they said. Pet programs, honeypot for whatever you need, a porculus bill, wasteful spending, pet projects, earmarks, 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 an orgy of spending. That was what they said about the stimulus bill. When in reality, there were no earmarks in the stimulus bill. No fewer than 17 different Republican senators stood up and absolutely with righteous indignation talked about the pet projects in the stimulus bill. And guess what? Every single one of them has earmarks in this bill. In fact, the Republican leader has twice as many solo earmarks in this bill than the Democratic leader. America, don't be fooled. Earmarking is an equal opportunity activity. It's a bad habit, and the minority party is taking full advantage of it. Don't take anyone seriously that says one thing and does another. That's the worst sin of all. Any parent knows one basic rule. The example you set is way more important than anything you say.
Last night, Senate Leader Reid lost not only an unnamed Republican vote, but 2 Democrats as well, forcing Democrats to pass a stopgap spending measure good until Wednesday. At issue, Republicans do expect to let the bill pass despite all those awful earmarks of theirs. They just want the chance to be heard on a dozen amendments, even though none of them are expected to pass, even though some have nothing to do with the budget, like labor laws and the fairness doctrine. Let's turn now to MSNBC political analyst Lawrence O'Donnell, contributor at Huffington Post and former Democratic Chief of Staff for the Senate Finance Committee. Great thanks for your time tonight, sir.
Good to be here, Keith, on one of my favorite subjects.
Thank you very much. I'm glad it is. Senator McCaskill's point, look to the Republican example, not their words. What's the lesson in the example?
Well, here are the things Claire McCaskill knows, that 6 out of 10 of the top 10 earmarkers are Republicans, that most of the earmark money in this omnibus bill was requested by and or supported by President Bush, that 40% of the earmarks in this bill are Republican earmarks. And what Senator McCaskill and a lot of other senators know is that there are plenty of good earmarks in this bill, and that not all earmarks are bad, and not all earmarks are embarrassing. And so, and it's a tiny, tiny piece of the federal government. It's less than 1% of the federal budget. So Senator McCain, who has apparently now staked a career on his opposition to earmarks, is someone who has devoted his attention to less than 1% of what the federal government does, and is completely willing to ignore 99% of what the government does.
And so the Republicans, as a party, stake at least their current reputation to delay this vote, not to kill it, not to offer some sort of alternative, not to go out on strike to get all the earmarks removed, but to offer this collection of doomed, irrelevant amendments. How does that help them shed the party of no label rather than augment it?
Well, this is partially set up for things to come. This is partially a way of saying you have to deal with us. You have to deal with us on health care. You have to deal with us on other things moving through the Senate. And that is a reality, and it can't be escaped. But really, this is the only thing they have found in the current political environment where they think there's any traction at all, is just to hold up, a $100,000 grant to some organization somewhere and say this is an absolute outrage that the government is doing this. They don't have a better position than the Democrats on Iraq. They don't have a better position than the Democrats on intervention into the economy, how to save the banking system, what to do in the mortgage crisis. They're not advancing any of those. This is it. This is what the party's about now, is earmarks, earmarks, earmarks.
Lawrence, explain something we heard from the Democratic side the other day. Alcee Hastings, the congressman, reportedly said, quote, "I wish Harry Reid would do things by 51 votes instead of 60 votes. If the Republicans don't like it, make them filibuster." Explain that. What's he referring to?
Oh, I could go on and on about this. This is the House of Representatives never understands the Senate. It's stunning what a gulf there is between those two cultures with they're living so close to each other. The House has very limited debate. In a typical House bill, most members of the House never get to say anything, and it's very embarrassing when they do. They're allowed to speak for 30 seconds or 1 minute or a maximum of 2 minutes in the House. They have nothing to say. It's just cheerleader stuff. The Senate has the principle of unlimited debate, which sounds pretty good in a democracy, until you find yourself debating something for 3 or 4 months. And so, in contradiction to the principle of unlimited debate, there is a thing called a cloture motion, and that cloture motion simply says there will be no more amendments allowed on a bill, and we will then take a vote on the complete bill. So we never see filibusters in the Senate. What we see are very long lists of amendments that one side or the other is ready to advance on a bill, and a lot of those amendments will be reasonable sounding things. And so the principle of unlimited debate runs into the necessity to move forward, and that's where cloture motions come through. If the majority leader, be he a Republican or Democrat, ever said to the minority, we're going to just go for our votes, for our 51 votes, that they would lose, because the other side would simply continue to offer amendments. They don't have to filibuster. They never have to filibuster.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe Congressman Hastings actually said, "I wish Harry Reid could do things by 51 votes," which would have made a good cheerleading motion from the House. In any event, our own Lawrence O'Donnell, great thanks. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Keith.